or is this full-time MMA now?
I love full-time MMA right now.
Back to the daily grind, and shout out to the full-time patrons. Make sure to hit subscribe if you're new and hit thumbs up if you're not a baby back bagel biting bitch boy, cause you know what time it is. It's full-time
MMA.
And let's jump straight into the Bellator 201 breakdown and predictions. This event is going to be taking place this Friday, June 29th at 9 p.m. Eastern, and in the main event we're going to see the women's flyweight title contested between Ilima-Lei Macfarlane and also Alexandra Lara. But there's also some more female flyweight action going down on the card with UFC veteran Valerie Leitner and Christina Williams. So gonna be a fun card, a good night of WMMA, as well as some good fights between Ryan Couture and Sada Wad in the co-main event. And we even got Juan Archuleta on the card down here. So we're gonna jump straight into the first fight of the night, which is between Juan Archuleta and Robbie Peralta, who's actually a UFC veteran, but I'm gonna be giving the edge to Archuleta in this fight. Juan is currently riding a 13-fight winning streak after losing his only pro loss back in 2015, and he's been super active since that loss, as he's had 13 fights that have happened in the last 3 years. Now he's going to be fighting one of his most experienced opponents and a UFC veteran in Robbie Peralta, who went 4-3 in the UFC, but he left the UFC on a 2-fight losing streak. He then went on to lose 2 more fights outside the UFC before getting his most recent win in a fight against Shad Smith. But I'm going to be giving this fight to Archuleta to get the biggest win of his career against his toughest opponent to date. But he looked great in his Bellator debut against William Joplin, and he's been a lot more active than Robbie Peralta as of late. So I'm giving the nod to Juan Archuleta. Moving on to Christina Williams versus Valerie Leitner. Valerie Leitner won her first 3 fights in the UFC before losing a title fight to Joanna Jędrzejczyk and then dropping 2 more fights in a row to Joanne Calderwood and Viviane Pereira. But since her stint in the UFC, she won her Bellator debut against Kate Jackson. Christina Williams she has won both of her pro fights. She's 2-0. And she won her Bellator debut against Heather Hardy, and then a split decision over Emily Ducote, who actually fought for the inaugural flyweight title. Now, Valerie Leitner fought at 115 pounds in the UFC, but she's since moved to 125 pounds when she moved to Bellator, and she feels like this is her home. She was notorious for having a hard time cutting weight down to 115 pounds. She was drained, which, you know, could have took away from her performance, but she was still able to get up to a title shot. But she's now at 125 pounds. And I'm picking her to win this fight, as she's going to be the most experienced opponent Christina Williams has fought to date, and she's also fighting in her natural weight class. And so with that being said, I'm picking Valerie Leitner to come in here and get a big W. And if she could string together a couple of wins, she could potentially be challenging for the female flyweight title in the future. One more win, maybe if she gets an impressive win here, or maybe one more win after this, she could be fighting the winner of Ilima-Lei Macfarlane versus Alexandra Lara in the future. Now, with that being said, we're moving to the co-main event of the evening between Sada Wad and Ryan Couture. This fight almost feels to me like Ryan Couture is getting fed to Sada Wad. Sada Wad's fighting at home. He's got more experience, and he's riding a 3-fight winning streak over some tough competition. Ryan Couture lost 2 fights in the UFC before eventually making it to Bellator, where he started off on a 2-0 run before losing 2 straight to Patricky Pitbull and Goiti Yamauchi. I think Sada Wad wins this fight unless Ryan Couture is able to secure a submission. Sada Wad's also been the more active fighter, but Ryan Couture is still an experienced fighter, and even though he hasn't beat the best fighter that he's fought in his career, he's still definitely experienced on the ground, and he's earned like 4 submissions in a row before losing those 2 fights to Patricky Pitbull and Goiti Yamauchi. So he's got some submission skills, so you know, always dangerous there. So, but I think Sada Wad comes in and wins this fight, as long as he doesn't get caught in a submission. So got Sada Wad moving to the main event of the evening, the female flyweight title over in Bellator. Current champion Ilima-Lei Macfarlane taking on Alexandra Azul Lara This is going to be a good fight, a close fight. This could go either way. Alejandra Lara is 7-1 as a pro. She won her Bellator debut against a more experienced fighter than Ilima-Lei Macfarlane. But before that, Alejandra was fighting outside of Bellator. But out of her 7 wins, she's finished 6 of those fights. 3 submissions and 3 also TKO KOs. So Alejandra Lara and she's only 23 years old, so she's a little more experienced than Ilima-Lei Macfarlane, who's 7-0 and younger. So this is, you know, she's got a chance in this fight. But Ilima-Lei Macfarlane is very talented on the ground, and I believe she's actually going to be more skilled as far as the jiu-jitsu is concerned, and the striking may be even though. So this is going to be a really good fight. Ilima-Lei Macfarlane has been fighting for Bellator since her 2nd pro fight, and she's remained undefeated to become Bellator's first 125-pound champion with a 5th round submission, which was her 4th submission win in her 7 pro fights. But she got a 5th round submission over Emily Ducote to win the inaugural title. Ilima is a skilled fighter, but she'll be facing her toughest test to date, arguably, in Alejandra Lara, who is 7-1 as a pro, and she fought against a very tough Lena Ovinchnikova in her Bellator debut. So this is actually a tough fight to call. Alejandra Lara is the younger, more experienced fighter, and her only loss came to the undefeated Colombian queen Sabina Mazo. But Lara has also finished 6 of her 7 wins, as I said earlier. But aside from her Bellator debut, she hasn't fought anyone on the level of Macfarlane. But to be fair, Macfarlane hasn't been fighting opponents as young or experienced as Lara. So Lara has a lot of potential, but I'm giving the edge to Ilima-Lei Macfarlane. I think Lara got clipped up a little bit in her last fight. I actually had to watch the last fight to make my decision, and she got clipped up a little bit on the feet, and that was her toughest test to date. But she was able to win the fight with the submission. But I think Macfarlane will have a little bit of a grappling advantage in this fight. She's got 4 wins herself by submission, and that's how she was able to win the title. And I believe 3 of her submissions are also arm bars. And I think the striking may be about even though. Alejandra Lara didn't look amazing as far as striking is concerned in her Bellator debut, but that's not really where Ilima-Lei Macfarlane's bread and butter has been either. So this is going to be a fun fight. It could potentially end in a submission, and whoever wins this fight is going to be Bellator's female flyweight champion. I'm giving the edge to the champion, Ilima-Lei Macfarlane. But I think Alejandra Lara still has a lot of potential. She's only 23 years old. She might lose this fight, but she could definitely work her way back to this title shot in the future. She's only 23 years old, but she could also win this fight. As I said, you know, she's very talented. She can finish the fight, and if she's able to finish the fight herself, if she's able to catch Ilima-Lei Macfarlane off guard and in a submission, catch her in a submission, or even, you know, catch her with a strike. I believe she landed a spinning back fist on her opponent in the last fight, and it landed solid, but it didn't really rock her. But she's, you know, she'll throw some stuff out there that could definitely rock you. So it's gonna be a fun fight. Definitely gonna be tuning in this Friday at 9 p.m. Eastern. So let the full-time family know what you think in the comments about Bellator 201. I'm out. And before we go, shout out to all the full-time MMA white belts that have hit the subscribe button. Make sure you also hit the notification bell right next to it so you're notified every time I upload a video. And if you want to become a full-time MMA blue belt, purple belt, brown belt, or black belt, all you have to do is go to patreon.com/fulltimemma. I'm out.
Bye, Felicia.